Good day, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Explores Australia. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're still hanging out in the Australian outback with the red kangaroo, or known by their Latin name, Osfranter rufus. So today we're going to finish up our time with the kangaroo and see learn about some pretty wild things, see what in a way, why they're labeled somewhat as the rodents of the outback, somewhat but not fully, and what kind of conservation measures are we taking to help save these animals or keep them from going extinct. But before we begin, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page on content on conservation. And if you're new to my channel, or if there's a question that you have, or there's an animal that you want me to do in the future, just send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in my description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get to it. We'll start off with the wild things. So, the red kangaroo, as you can guess, they live in a really harsh environment, right? So, being that they're somewhat in the desert regions, you can imagine how hot it gets, and they need to find ways to keep themselves cool. Thankfully, there's a number of adaptations that they do to help them survive the harsh environment. One of these is they will increase their panting and sweating rates to help cool their bodies. They continuously will lick themselves as a way of keeping cool, and the plants that they eat, some of these plants actually have a high level of sodium or salt, which is okay for the kangaroos as it helps them kind of be able to store water, or it can help them go without water, as they are able to also reabsorb the urine in their kidneys and release it back out into their body. So therefore, they can minimize water loss. So thankfully, the kidney really does come in handy in this environment. Another wild thing I bet you didn't know: despite their appearance, red kangaroos are actually pretty good swimmers. If they're being chased by a predator, like let's say maybe dingoes, or for young, if it was maybe the other predators like invasive species, which we'll get into a little later. These guys basically will head right for the water. In fact, it's not uncommon to see a red kangaroo if you're living in Australia and if you see them on the beach. There's been a couple of videos that I've seen of red kangaroos actually jumping into the ocean to escape predators. However, let's say that those dingoes try to go after the kangaroos in the water. Here's a little bit of a dark side that you might find a little disturbing. If they were really trying to get away from a predator, or the predator continues to chase them even after hitting the water, they may use these powerful, strong forepaws to actually hold their predator underwater as a way of drowning it. And another major thing, which I don't have a picture for, once upon a time, it was thought that we could battle a red kangaroo in the boxing ring, which really is kind of probably to me the most stupidest thing I've ever heard of, because when you think about it, having a pretty strong tail, pretty big feet, and these powerful forearms, a red kangaroo would really take away a heavyweight champion's title as champion of the world, because the kangaroo really does kick major butt. Now let's talk a little bit about the problems and the challenges that they face. Now, thankfully, I can tell you that this animal does seem to be fine, as it is not considered to be an endangered species. But that doesn't mean that we can relax and let these animals be. Of course, we want let nature take its course, but these guys do face some problems and challenges. Just like the saltwater crocodile, they're facing problems from human activity, which includes mining, agricultural use, even land development. See, all these things affect the kangaroo's environment and takes away more and more of their habitat, leaving less and less for the kangaroos to be able to survive and reproduce. So what's the problem with it, right? Well, unfortunately, red kangaroos also, here's how it really goes. So these kangaroos, it's okay, this guy is not a poacher. But it is considered to be okay to hunt kangaroos as they are actually a pretty big multi-million dollar enterprise. Here's what I mean. The kangaroo's meat is actually considered to be really, really good. Very high in protein and very low in fat. So many will turn to so kangaroo meat is kind of a big business. But let's forget about this part for a minute. We're talking more about the human aspect of what else is going on. See, unfortunately, because of human activity with highways, kangaroos are often hit by these cars and trucks on the road, and it kills many kangaroos a year. So, another major problem that they're facing, invasive species. And I'm going to tell you, there is a menagerie of invasive species affecting many of Australia's native wildlife, which includes the red fox, which is known to prey upon young joeys if they're not on their guard, as well as other animals such as feral deer, feral horse, feral cattle, even camels are considered to be an invasive species. Later on in our time in Australia, I would like to talk with you about do a special episode on some of the environmental impacts that different invasive species that call Australia home now have done to the landscape, and how the animals themselves are having to be forced to adapt or to coexist with these neighbors. But we'll get into that at a later time. Now, let's talk, of course, about the conservation efforts that are being taken into effect. Just like the saltwater crocodile, people are working hard to try and help kangaroos today. So one way that we're helping, it seems like it would be negative, but hunting can help kangaroos, especially like with those in an area where they may be a little overpopulated. But sustainable hunting is more likely helping to make sure that the kangaroo's population isn't going to crash. But where I'm going with this guy is more about aimed at helping to exterminate or drastically reduce the populations of invasive species, though for some it might be a little too late. But still, every individual invasive animal that's taken out of another's habitat is a big win for conservation. What else is going on? The kangaroo meat, like I said, it is a pretty good enterprise, and it does help, and it is okay as long as it's done on a sustainable level. Another major impact for kangaroos, conservation status-wise, is basically helping injured kangaroos finding abandoned roos, if that is, of course, if their mother was killed, or even helping them by breeding them in human care under management in zoos or wildlife parks, as well as research centers helping to ensure kangaroos continue to survive the outback. Another major step that we can take, especially for the farmers, because unfortunately they do see kangaroos as pests, we have to learn how to coexist, how we can grow our job enterprise like the cattle ranches, while being able to leave space for the wild kangaroos. If we're going to be able to survive, we have to learn to coexist. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all once again for joining me today on our little time here with the kangaroos. But we're going to say goodbye to our friends, and we need to prepare ourselves because we're going to meet a special neighbor of the kangaroo, the emu. So until next week, though, this is Safari Mack, and I'll see you all out there.